your witness.
I'm going to jump in and say one thing actually to add to your case, particularly when it comes
Yes.
to Doolittle Raid. There is one part of this movie that absolutely works, and that's Alec
Mm-hmm.
Baldwin as James Doolittle.
Yes.
Like he actually, I mean that, like he actually understood the assignment on this one. He brings the right kind of energy to it. He kind of plays, of course, this character who was a real character in history and was quite a personality. And he makes you believe that he's pulling all these guys together to pull this
Mm-hmm.
entire crazy ass thing off.
It without sounding like the A Team or something retarded like that, Alec Baldwin really does present this as kind of a suicide mission.
Oh
And
yeah,
they're like, well, what if we don't make it? He was like, learn to speak Chinese, like, or remember this phrase in Chinese because you're gonna need it. Alec Baldwin, it's something that we talk about a lot here on the Rattleton Broadcasting Network, and I have actually said this exact phrase on a different podcast. We really do pay special attention to how masculinity is presented in the modern culture. And 20 years ago, Alec Baldwin is a man's man. That is a guy saying, we as men, we as soldiers, we as Americans are going to do the job that we are trained to do. And if we die doing it, all the better and all the glory. And that's really cool. And living in today's movie going culture, you tend to forget that because you don't see it very much. And it was nice to see in this movie. And I applaud Michael Bay for using the exact right tone for that level of masculinity in that character.
and he's a bit of an outlier when it comes to Bay characters. Oh, I guess maybe the only one I'd probably compare him to is probably John Mason in The Rock, where there's
Mm-hmm.
also a little bit of, like I say, a lot of other characters in Michael Bay movies kind of get, either full throttle or all the way back. But it's like
Mm-hmm.
he's fun. Like going to his first scene where Ben Affleck's apologizing to him, and he's trying to talk about homages and stuff like that. And he turns to him and he says, "Lieutenant, that's absolute bullshit, right? But that's really good bullshit." Like there's a wryness about him. There's
Yeah.
charm. There's all those sorts of things that you'd want in a commander who's about to say, "Oh yeah, by the way, guys, we're going to do something absolutely insane and unprecedented in the history of warfare."
Andrew Grimm, you're not only a military historian, you're also a Rattleton Broadcasting Network podcast historian.
Yes, I am.
You've been you have been there almost from the beginning, and you've listened to almost every one of our shows: the bad, the good, the farty, the Taco Bell shitty stories, all of them.
Yes.
And you poor unfortunate soul. Do you remember the Magnificent Seven podcast that Robert and I did for Damn You? The one where we actually coined the title "Damn You Hollywood," and the thing that we
I
talked about. Go ahead.
I was about to say. So one, I think it was coined before that, and two, I never listened to that one because I've never actually seen the movie, and oftentimes I'll skip listening to Damn You Hollywoods until I've actually seen the movie that I want to see. I've just never
Sure.
seen that version of the Magnificent Seven.
Okay. It's absolutely
I
the
failed.
Magnificent Seven that we came up with. Damn You Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because I've gone back and listened to it. But one of the things we talked a lot about on that show is the way men talk to each other.
Yeah.
Which, look, say what you will about Michael Bay, he's not as bad. He's not quite the autistic robot that George Lucas is, but he can also have a fundamental misunderstanding of how people operate. He tends to go, men have penises and girls have vaginas, and that's how he understands emotion. We get you, Michael Bay. We do understand you, sir. However, somewhere along the line, somewhere in here, and I don't know, maybe it was a second unit director or somebody, made Michael Bay a real boy momentarily, but he understood how men talk to each other. He understood that intrinsic relationship among men, and it comes out in the scene where Alec Baldwin is chiding Ben Affleck. It's one of the better scenes of the movie. Like,
Oh, it is.
I look, is Pearl Harbor terrible? Sure, but I'm not really arguing against that. But I think it's a throwing a baby out with the bathwater thing to say it's all bad 100% the way through, because there are magic moments in this movie. The movie's just so goddamn long. It's kind of like, okay, there are great moments in this, but it's so long it gets lost in the morass.
Yeah.
And there's more bad outweighing the good, but it would be wrong, dead wrong, 100% wrong to say there's nothing good about this movie. The war scenes are good. There are great moments. I like the stuff with Dan Aykroyd. When
Yeah, the
Dan
Dan
Aykroyd
Aykroyd stuff is interesting.
I think they got a really good actor to do that part, and it's funny because my son reacted really big to the scene where Dan Aykroyd's like, we can't crack this, and we don't want to give you wrong information. And he's talking to the military personnel. The military is like, your job is to crack it. Go do it. And like, what's Dan Aykroyd supposed to do? Flip the table over? Like, he's got to follow orders. Like, we've been there. We've all been at our job where we've been in a position of telling the boss this isn't doable, and the boss says, I don't give a shit. Your job is to do it. Figure it out. And and we don't have thousands of lives at stake if we fuck up or if we miss the mark. And I think Dan Aykroyd captured that moment really, really well in that scene.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I like that character in terms of, he was somebody who was, and again, this is like, and maybe something I'll do a challenge on your point is that I think that's one of those things that Michael Bay, in terms of the conversations between and among male characters, I think something that he's, I don't know if regressed is the right word, but has fallen off of in later movies. This one does it because, again, he treats somebody whose job it is to necessarily, be a cryptographer with the same level of importance and gravitas as somebody's is to be a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
And I don't think they do that the same, and they definitely don't do that the same way in later Michael Bay movies.
I would like to present as evidence to the court the movie Independence Day.
Sure.
Independence Day is an awfully silly movie, but it has some brilliantly funny, exciting, celebratory moments.
Yes. Yep.
Bill Pullman's speech at where he ends it with, we're going to survive because today is the day of our independence, and everybody cheers, and there's sperm everywhere, and it's all fantastic. Everyone's covered. It's great.
What version were you watching, man?
Don't worry about it, but it's on.
I was about to say, you were watching like the extra extended version.
Yeah, I was watching the French version. France gets it all. France gets it all. But it's becoming a weirder podcast by the year. Anyway,
I can historically verify that.
Yeah, the graph. As silly as the FDR standing in his fucking wheelchair bit is, my kids cheered at that. They were like, "Woo!"
Oh, yeah.
Like they don't fucking know. They don't care either. The FDR is crippling polio at the time. He's not getting out of that chair, but it was a moment. It was a cinematic moment, and for two kids who don't know any better, and for an old man who's so well beyond caring about stuff like this, I was like, "Woohoo!" I wanted FDR to pick up a machine gun, Rambo style, and just start firing it into the air.
The thing is, he might have actually done that. Because I think they show it like he's still wearing the braces, and I think he might have done that. Might have been a little bit of a, pardon the phrase, a party trick that he had, where he could actually get himself mobile if he could lock the braces in, and so every so often he would do that to kind of.
Well, I was reading the historical inaccuracies part of the wiki on this, and one of the things they made a point of saying is FDR did not do that.
Okay.
Whether he did it at other, to show up to the ladies, who knows? But apparently, if he did it, he didn't do it in that moment, in that way.
Yeah, exactly.